All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're looking at a single, quiet government decision from over 50 years ago that the source material argues permanently rigged the economic game against the everyday earner. We're going to trace that literal pinch you feel in your wallet back to one specific moment in history and expose the hidden math that has silently wiped out a massive chunk of your purchasing power.
So, let me ask you a pretty blunt question. Why are you broke? Or, at the very least, why do you feel like you're constantly running on a financial treadmill? You know the drill. You've probably been told your whole life that you just need to budget better, maybe skip that expensive morning coffee, or just put in a few more hours at the office. But what if your inability to build wealth isn't actually about your spending habits or your work ethic? It's a completely valid financial anxiety that so many of us share. And the material we're unpacking today suggests that just working harder simply isn't the wealth-building engine it used to be.
I mean, have you ever actually stopped to wonder why a single salary back in 1970 could buy a house, a car, and comfortably support an entire family? Fast forward to our modern reality, and we routinely see two full-time incomes barely stretching enough to cover rent and basic groceries. This isn't just nostalgia. It's a measurable, sharp contrast in historical purchasing power versus modern financial struggle, and it really establishes the core problem facing the working class today.
To figure out why this massive shift happened, we actually have to rewind all the way back to the summer of 1971 to look at the catalyst. Picture this. It's Sunday evening, August 15th, 1971, and President Richard Nixon interrupts primetime television to make a huge announcement. See, before this date, the United States operated on the gold standard. But on that August night, Nixon temporarily suspended the convertibility of the US dollar into physical gold. That single choice ushered in the post-1971 fiat era. Now, I know talking about monetary policy can sometimes sound like a dry economics lesson, but the source argues that this exact choice is the reason your everyday savings account is struggling so hard to keep pace with the cost of living.
Okay, so to really grasp this, we've got to understand exactly what changed. Before 1971, your money was backed by physical gold. A dollar was essentially a physical receipt for a tangible piece of metal sitting securely in a vault somewhere. The government couldn't just print endless amounts of money because they were strictly limited by the actual physical gold they held. But Nixon's decision severed that tie completely, creating what we call fiat currency. Suddenly, money was backed by nothing but trust in the government, rather than a physical commodity. It transformed from a receipt for a precious metal into something that could just be printed at will.
So, how exactly does this print away your wealth? Well, the source material uses a really brilliant analogy for this. They call it the diluted lemonade effect.
And this just perfectly illustrates the concept. Step 1. Imagine you have a pitcher of absolutely perfect lemonade. It tastes great, the ratio of lemon to sugar is spot on. Then step 2. Someone comes along and dumps a whole gallon of plain tap water right into your pitcher. You still have a pitcher of liquid. In fact, you have a lot more liquid than you started with, but the flavor is completely ruined. It's totally diluted. According to the source, this is exactly what happens when a government prints unbacked money out of thin air. When trillions of new dollars are dumped into the economy, the money already sitting in your bank account doesn't physically vanish, but its purchasing power is mathematically diluted. You don't lose your dollar bills, but man, those dollars you have suddenly buy a whole lot less.
All right, so the lemonade metaphor makes sense, right? But what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, it triggers what is known as the Great Wealth Divergence.
The math on this is honestly staggering. In 1971, the median home price in the United States was around $25,000. Today, you are looking at well over $400,000 for that exact same house. Think about that for a second. Let's be real. Did that house miraculously become 15 times better? Did someone sneak in and install solid gold fixtures while no one was looking? No way. It's the exact same structure of wood and brick. The physical house didn't go up in value. The currency used to buy it went down in value.
And this brings us to the most crucial number in this whole explainer. 80%. Since that 1971 decision, the US dollar has lost over 80% of its purchasing power. The material argues that when you leave your money sitting safely in a traditional checking account, thinking you're being super financially responsible, inflation is actually acting as a silent, invisible tax, eroding that 80% away over time.
Which leads to a pretty uncomfortable reality. Pre-1971, worker productivity and worker pay grew together.
If you worked harder and produced more, your pay went up, right in tandem. But post-1971, right when that gold standard was abandoned, a massive gap opened up. Worker productivity skyrocketed. People are literally generating more value than ever for corporations, but real inflation-adjusted wages have completely flatlined. The source highlights that many of us are working twice as hard just to tread water simply because our paychecks are paid out in a currency that's constantly losing its flavor, exactly like that diluted lemonade.
Now, the source material makes a really provocative claim about all this. They argue that this inflation is actually a feature, not a bug. Let's break down exactly what they mean by that systemic design. The argument here is that the system mathematically penalizes the working class, who tend to save their wealth in cash. And at the exact same time, it massively rewards the wealthy class who own assets. The ultra-rich aren't sweating the dollar losing its value because, well, they don't really hold their wealth in dollars. They hold real estate, businesses, and stocks. So when more money is printed and prices go up across the board, the value of those assets goes right up with it. One group gets drained, and the other gets elevated by the exact same mechanism.
So what is the ultimate takeaway for us? The material lays out a crystal-clear choice for navigating a post-1971 economy. Saving cash is a losing strategy due to depreciation. Instead, buying assets is the winning strategy. The suggested method to stop the bleeding is to wake up to this huge paradigm shift and start converting that depreciating cash into hard assets and broad market index funds. The whole goal is to hold things that compound and grow faster than those printing presses can run.
Which really brings us to our final question. Are you still holding the diluted lemonade? The historical shift in 1971 completely changed the definition of money, and relying on old strategies in a fiat system is basically guaranteed to leave you frustrated. It's time to rethink your strategy, right? Ask yourself how you can start building a truly inflation-proof portfolio today.